In life, there are periods when everything goes smoothly. You meet the right people. Opportunities arise at the right time, and your heart feels lighter and brighter. But there are also times when things seem to slow down. You try hard but don't see results. Your spirits are low, relationships are strained, and you feel more anxious than usual. Many people call this luck, but in reality, if you look deeper, it could be a sign of your fortune. Fortune isn't entirely mysterious. It largely reflects your inner state, lifestyle habits, mental energy, and how you approach life each day. In today's video, we'll explore where a person's fortune truly comes from, why it fluctuates, and how each person can better understand their own fortune to live a more harmonious, brighter, and sustainable life. If you enjoy life lessons that bring peace of mind and a lighter life, subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to follow our meaningful content. Some people may not seem particularly outstanding at first glance, nor do they always have smooth sailing in life, but the longer they live, the more fortunate they become. Their careers gradually improve, relationships become less complicated. They easily meet kind people and opportunities wherever they go, and they avoid getting themselves into unnecessary trouble. Conversely, there are also people who seem to have all the advantages, but their lives gradually become more difficult. Small matters easily become big problems. Relationships easily become strained. Their inner selves are constantly weary. The longer they live, the more they feel an invisible weight pulling their lives down. The ancients often called this luck, but if understood superficially, many people would think that luck is just a matter of chance or fate. In reality, luck is much deeper than that. It is directly related to one's inner self, character, living habits, and how one treats life. What is luck, and how should it be understood correctly? Luck can be understood as the sum total of spirit, life, energy, relationships, behavior, and the conditions surrounding a person at each stage of life. It's not just about external luck, but also the result of inner self and way of life. To put it simply, luck isn't some mystical thing only fortune tellers can talk about, nor is it simply about good or bad fortune. Luck is the overall state of a person's life during a particular period. It's a combination of inner mindset and external circumstances. It's reflected in how one perceives life, how things come to them, and how they react to what happens. There are people who, wherever they go, carry an energy that makes others feel comfortable, trust them, and want to connect with them. They don't need to be overly eloquent, yet they easily receive help. They don't need to try to please anyone, yet they still encounter benefactors. It's not because they are luckier than others for no reason, but because their way of life and inner state create a very different aura. Conversely, some people are always tense, suspicious, resentful, easily angered, pessimistic, prone to blaming others, or easily competitive. They may not be bad people, but their inner selves are heavy. And that heaviness not only makes them tired, but also subtly affects how others perceive them, how opportunities come or go, how they hold on to or lose the good things in life. Therefore, luck is not something that falls from the outside. It is a flow nourished by many things within. Your mindset, how you treat others, whether you maintain gratitude, sincerity, kindness, and composure, all contribute to your luck. A person with a pure heart is more likely to spot opportunities. A person with less envy is less likely to ruin relationships. A person who is considerate, thoughtful, keeps their word, and lives a virtuous life is more easily liked. These things may sound like philosophical principles, but they actually work very realistically in life. Luck, if understood correctly, is not magic. It is the cumulative result of many small ways of living each day. Why is it that some people find their lives going more smoothly, while others find theirs becoming increasingly difficult? Some people aren't necessarily more talented, yet they are well liked wherever they go, encounter opportunities and benefactors, and rarely cause themselves suffering. Conversely, some people repeatedly face the same old obstacles. This shows that fortune isn't solely determined by fate, but also by how a person cultivates their spiritual life and character. This is something worth reflecting on. In reality, there are people who aren't exceptionally brilliant, yet their lives gradually unfold in a better direction. They don't always achieve great success, but they rarely fall into serious trouble. When difficulties arise, they often find help. When they lose their way, they often have a chance to turn back. When they stumble, they usually have the inner strength to get back up without harboring resentment for too long. This isn't just luck. It comes from living in a way that makes their lives less self-destructive. They're less impulsive, so they mess things up less because of emotions. They are less clingy, so they hold on to less of what should be let go of. They are more sincere, so they find it easier to keep genuine people around. They are more grateful, so they feel less deprived. They know how to correct themselves, so they don't repeat old mistakes too often. Conversely, some people are trapped in the same cycle. They change environments, but still face conflict. They change jobs, but remain dissatisfied. They change partners, but still experience the same pain. They change circumstances, but their hearts remain heavy. Upon closer examination, the problem often lies not just in bad luck or fate, but in internal patterns that have yet to be transformed. A suspicious person finds it hard to trust others wherever they go. A person prone to anger easily gets into conflicts wherever they go. A person overly self-centered easily wins and loses wherever they go. A person who always blames others finds it difficult to grow. These things not only weigh heavily on their inner selves, but also create a cycle that causes their lives to repeat the same old paths. In other words, some people find their lives becoming more fortunate because they are gradually untangling their inner knots. Others find their lives becoming heavier because they are silently carrying too many old burdens without looking back. That's why luck isn't just something to look at, but something to cultivate. Cultivating good fortune isn't about searching for some mystical secret. It begins with keeping a slightly clearer mind, being a little less hot-tempered, a little less greedy, a little less suspicious, living a little more kindly, and being a little more honest with yourself. These changes won't transform your life immediately, but they subtly shift the course of your life. You may not see the results immediately today, but a person who keeps a lighter heart, lives more virtuously, behaves more moderately, then is more willing to reflect and improve themselves, will sooner or later create a different kind of fortune. Because life not only rewards what we do outwardly, but also the state of mind we carry within ourselves each day. And perhaps, understanding the true nature of fate is also a way for people to stop blaming everything on destiny. There are things we can't choose, that's true. But there are also many things we can completely cultivate from within. When our inner self changes, our temperament changes. When our temperament changes, our relationships change. When our relationships change, our life path gradually changes as well. This isn't superstition, it's a very profound but very real law of life. There are periods in life when things seem to be gradually opening up. It's not necessarily about becoming rich instantly, becoming famous immediately, or achieving spectacular success. But there's a clear feeling that life is moving towards a brighter future. The heart feels lighter. Things are less complicated. Relationships are less strained. One no longer has to struggle as much as before. Conversely, there are also periods when everything seems the same, but inwardly problems begin to arise. The mind feels heavier. Decisions are more wrong. Conflicts are more likely, and a hazy veil seems to obscure one's way of living. This is often when one's fortune is shifting. And importantly, fortune rarely changes abruptly from the outside. It's usually preceded by very ordinary signs within one's inner self and daily life. These are signs that your luck is improving. Start sleeping better. Your mind is less troubled. You argue less. You meet kinder people. You work more clearly, and suitable opportunities gradually appear. Good luck doesn't necessarily mean striking it rich right away, but often begins with a clearer mind and a less chaotic life. Many people think good fortune means money pouring in, great opportunities appearing constantly, or a very clear breakthrough in life. But in reality, good fortune rarely begins with such flamboyant things. It usually comes very quietly, and the first sign isn't external, but internal. One of the most beautiful signs is that you start sleeping better. It sounds simple, but sleep truly reflects your inner state. When your mind is less stressed, less worried, and less burdened with unresolved issues, your body can truly rest. People whose luck is improving are often not experiencing a complete absence of problems, but rather a growing sense of inner peace. And when the mind has a place to rest, life begins to change. Along with that comes a less confused mind. Things that used to make you panic no longer disturb you as much. You begin to see things more clearly, react less impulsively, and are less led astray by emotions. This is a very important sign, because when the mind is clearer, people will make things less difficult for themselves and create less trouble in their lives. And many bad things in life don't actually come from circumstances, but from making decisions when your mind is confused. Another sign is that you argue less. This isn't because you're weaker, avoiding confrontation, or afraid of conflict, but because you're starting to understand what's worth keeping and what's not worth worrying about. People whose luck improves often don't waste energy on petty arguments as they used to. They're less inclined to win every conversation, less inclined to prove themselves, and less likely to let heated emotions ruin long-term important matters. This significantly reduces the likelihood of their relationships breaking down. Then you'll find yourself starting to meet kinder people. This is very interesting in life. When a person's inner self changes, the energy field they carry also changes. Connect more easily with kind, mature people who can support or accompany them in the right way. It's not that benefactors just fall from the sky, but because when you become more enlightened, you're less drawn to the kinds of people or relationships that harm you as before. Working with a clearer mind is also a very clear sign. There are periods when your mind is so confused that everything you do is disorganized. Your thoughts are hazy and your decisions are misaligned. But when your luck starts to improve, you'll find your mind becomes clearer again. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll become smarter immediately, but it will be clearer, more certain, and less scattered. You'll know what to do first, what to skip later, which direction to go, and you'll no longer be dragged along by unnecessary things. And then, the right opportunities begin to appear. Note that it's about right, not just big. It could be a job that's a good fit but happens at the right time, a healthier relationship, a mentor, a friend, a small door that opens at just the right moment. Good fortune doesn't necessarily mean hitting the jackpot right away. It usually starts with the right things gradually finding you when you're ready to receive them. Signs that your luck is declining include a heavy heart, irritability, haste in everything you do, frequent conflicts, negative thinking, a lack of direction, or consistently making wrong decisions. When luck is down, bad things often don't necessarily come from the outside. The problems start from within. Just as good fortune often has warning signs, bad fortune rarely comes unexpectedly. It usually begins subtly with small changes in mood, behavior, and inner quality each day. And if not recognized early, people can easily let themselves spiral into a difficult period, mistakenly believing it's simply due to circumstances. One of the clearest signs is a constant feeling of heaviness in the mind. Nothing major needs to happen, but there's an inner feeling of confinement, tightness, and fatigue. You wake up feeling unlightened. You feel dragged down while working. Even resting doesn't feel truly refreshing. This heaviness is noteworthy because it often signals that too many unresolved issues are accumulating within you. When one's mood is down, they become easily irritable. Even small things can upset them. Ordinary matters can trigger their nerves. Others haven't done much, yet they already feel annoyed. This isn't just a matter of temperament. It's a sign that the nervous system and inner self are overloaded. And when the inside is overloaded, people are very likely to create unnecessary conflicts. Another manifestation is rushing into everything. The more confused one's mind, the more easily life becomes unbalanced. People tend to speak quickly, make quick decisions, and react quickly, but without truly understanding. Haste deprives people of depth, observational skills, and makes them very prone to unnecessary mistakes. This is why when luck is down, many people not only encounter bad things, but also make things worse through their own reactions. Frequent conflicts are also a sign worth reflecting on. It's possible that not everyone around you is becoming worse at the same time. It could be that you're experiencing too much inner tension, making it easy to clash wherever you go. When your heart is restless, your judgment of others becomes distorted, and your ears are more sensitive to what others say. And so, things that could have been resolved easily turn into unnecessary conflicts. Negative thinking, disorientation, or consistently making wrong decisions are deeper manifestations of declining fortune. When the mind is clouded by weariness, fear, or prolonged stagnation, it becomes difficult to see the right path. People may choose the wrong people, the wrong tasks, the wrong times, or react in the wrong ways. And the more mistakes they make, the heavier their hearts become. The heavier their hearts, the more likely their decisions are to go astray. It's a vicious cycle that can easily drag people down if not stopped in time. The most important thing is that when luck is down, bad things don't always come from the outside. They often start from within, from an internal mess. If your inner self isn't cleared up, then even if you change environments, jobs, or people around you, you can still carry that mess with you. Therefore, recognizing where your luck is headed isn't about superstition or panic, but about knowing when to return to the root of your being. If you feel brighter, continue nurturing that brightness with a good lifestyle, gratitude, calmness, and gentle discipline. If you feel heavier, don't immediately blame fate. Perhaps the first thing to do isn't to try to rush life, but to stop and clear your heart first. Because very often, luck doesn't change from the outside, but from the moment your inner self begins to be guided back on the right path. There are people who have gone through a period where their lives felt trapped in a heavy loop. Everything went wrong. Everywhere they went, they encountered obstacles. Relationships easily broke down. Work was difficult to succeed. Their minds were constantly stressed, tired, and they easily felt life was unfair to them. In such times, many people often think that they must be unlucky, that their fortune is bad, that life is not as kind to them as others. But there is a truth worth contemplating. Many people have escaped that period not by changing their fate, but by changing themselves. When their way of life changes, their inner selves change, their temperament changes, and their lives gradually change as well. And that is one of the clearest proofs that fortune is not something separate from a person, but is nurtured or eroded every day by their own state of mind. This is the story of someone who changed their fortune by changing themselves. There are people who used to live in a very difficult situation. Everything they did went wrong, but after they changed their habits, their way of thinking, kept their promises, lived more kindly and disciplined, their lives gradually turned around. It wasn't because of a miracle, but because when the inner self changes, the environment around them also changes. In real life, turning points don't begin with a big opportunity, but with a very small yet very real change. Some people used to live messy lives, stay up late, make promises, and then forget them. Work haphazardly, speak impulsively, easily blame others, and always see others as the reason for their misfortunes. They weren't bad people, but this way of life caused their inner selves to become increasingly troubled. And when the inner self is troubled, everything externally is easily thrown off balance. Then, at some point, after enough setbacks and exhaustion, they begin to look back. Not to blame themselves, but to understand that some things keep repeating themselves, not only because life is unfair to them, but also because they are contributing to creating those cycles. Change doesn't usually come with grand pronouncements. It begins with going to bed earlier, making fewer empty promises, working more regularly, saying fewer hurtful things, reacting less emotionally, and keeping your promises to yourself more often. Some people start learning to be kinder in small things, less harsh with family, less irritable with colleagues, less selfish in everyday matters. Some learn to be more grateful instead of focusing only on what they lack. It sounds simple, but these changes are where fortune begins to shift. Because when a person changes their way of life, they are also changing the energy field they carry each day. Someone who used to be late becomes more trustworthy. Someone who used to be hot-tempered becomes more cooperative. Someone who used to lack discipline now has a foundation to keep their job and better opportunities. One who used to only see the faults of others now begins to see the areas they need to improve. And naturally, life began to respond differently. Not in a miraculous or instantaneous way, but in a very practical way. Relationships became less strained. Job opportunities came at the right time. Kind people appeared more frequently. Wrong choices decreased. Self-inflicted problems also became fewer. From the outside, it seemed like their luck was improving. But looking deeper, it was actually the result of an inner self that had begun to be reorganized. It's not because of magic, but because when your inner self changes, the environment around you also changes. This is a very profound truth, because life outside is not only determined by circumstances, but also by how you approach those circumstances. When your mind changes, you will see differently, choose differently, react differently, and consequently the results will be different. A less troubled person makes fewer troubled decisions. A less angry person breaks fewer good relationships. A person who lives more virtuously is more likely to be appreciated and helped by others. That is how one's fortune is changed from its root. Good fortune is inseparable from one's inner disposition. A person with a peaceful mind, kind words, a moderate lifestyle, and good manners usually possesses a pleasant aura. Others feel at ease and are more inclined to help them. Conversely, a person filled with anger, doubt, arrogance, impulsiveness, and heavy negative energy often unknowingly pushes away good opportunities and favorable relationships. This is a very profound principle, yet also very easy to observe in life. There are people who don't need to say much. Just being around them makes others feel comfortable. They aren't always perfect, but they possess a stability, moderation, and kindness that makes others feel at ease. That is their inner disposition. And that inner disposition is directly related to their fortune. A person with a calm mind is not easily prone to overreacting. They know when to stop, when to speak just enough, and when to behave thoughtfully. Such people rarely cause unnecessary trouble wherever they go, and they are less likely to create conflicts for themselves, less likely to ruin good things, and more likely to inspire trust in others. And in life, being trusted is a great blessing. It opens opportunities, creates connections, and opens doors that mere ability alone may not be able to open. Kind words are also a very important part of one's character. People who speak without harshness, sarcasm, or adding unnecessary burdens to others often carry a very different aura. It's not because they're pretending to be kind, but because deep down they've shed many of the sharp edges that hurt others. And such people often go further in relationships, in their work, and in how life responds to them. Living moderately and knowing when to act appropriately are also factors that greatly improve one's fortune. People who know when to act appropriately usually know where they stand, when to advance, when to retreat, when to keep their word, when to remain silent, when to be grateful, and when to correct their own behavior. They don't overreact, don't make themselves overly self-centered, and don't let fleeting emotions ruin their long-term path. Conversely, people with a lot of anger, suspicion, arrogance, impulsiveness, and heavy negative energy are very likely to unknowingly deplete their own good fortune. Anger makes them prone to conflict and offending good people. Suspicion makes them untrustworthy, uncooperative, and prone to damaging valuable connections. Arrogance makes them difficult to learn, difficult to correct, and unable to maintain the humility needed to go far. Impulsiveness leads them to make mistakes in important decisions. And prolonged negative energy makes others, even without being told, tend to want to avoid them. It's noteworthy that many people don't realize they're pushing good opportunities and good fortune out of their lives. Not because of bad luck, but because their minds are too heavy. They're still waiting for good luck to come, but their inner selves aren't pure enough, bright enough, or pleasant enough to hold on to it when it arrives. Therefore, if you want to change your fortune, sometimes the most important question isn't when life will change for the better, but whether you've truly begun to correct your own mindset. Are you living in a way that makes others feel at ease when they're around you? Are you keeping your word more, being less hot-tempered, less resentful, and more considerate? Are you making the lives around you lighter or heavier? When a person begins to live differently from within, they gradually develop a different kind of aura. And as that aura changes, the way life responds to them will also change. This is not a mystery, it's a very real law. Good fortune is not just a gift from heaven, but also something that people silently create through their own mindset and way of life each day. There are things in life that seem insignificant at first glance, but subtly determine a person's path over the long term. Words are one of them. Relationships are no exception. Many people seek to change their fortune through far-fetched things, but fail to realize that every day they are nurturing or depleting their luck through the way they speak and interact with others. An uncontrolled remark can shatter an opportunity. A habit of complaining can cloud one's inner self. A wrong relationship can drag down a period of life for a long time. Conversely, kind words and right relationships can elevate a person in a profound and lasting way. Because luck doesn't lie in mysterious external things, but is formed from everyday things, the way we speak and the way we interact with others. The connection between luck and daily speech. Words not only affect others, but also reflect one's own inner self. Those who constantly complain, criticize, speak harshly, lie, or spread negativity will pollute their own life energy field. Conversely, sincere, calm, and well-intentioned speech is a very powerful way to cultivate good fortune. The ancients said that misfortune comes from the mouth. But if we look deeper, words not only create misfortune or fortune externally, but also nourish or deplete our inner energy. People speak a lot every day. Some words once spoken seem to vanish into thin air, but in reality, they leave a very clear mark on our inner selves, our relationships, and even the energy field we carry. A person who constantly complains will gradually develop a habit of viewing life through a lens of deprivation and dissatisfaction. Initially, it might just be complaining to relieve stress, but if repeated, it will become a way of life. That person will increasingly find dissatisfaction more appealing than gratitude. And when the mind becomes accustomed to seeing everything in a negative light, it becomes very difficult for one's luck to improve. Similarly, those who constantly criticize and speak harshly are silently polluting their own life energy. When someone habitually uses sharp words to speak about others, they not only offend the listener, but also make their own inner self rougher, harder, and less peaceful. Harsh words may provide momentary satisfaction, but they leave a very heavy aftershock in the heart. Lying is also a very powerful way to lose one's luck. Not only because it makes others lose trust, but also because it separates a person from their inner integrity. A person who lies frequently will gradually lose the purity of their mind. They must remember what they have distorted, cover up, defend themselves, and live in a state of being untrue to life. This makes it very difficult for their inner peace, and when the mind is not at peace, their luck will also be difficult to maintain. Spreading negativity through words is something many people do without realizing it. Some people carry their frustration, boredom, skepticism, and complaining energy wherever they go. They don't intentionally harm anyone, but their way of speaking makes the space around them heavy. And over time, they themselves end up living in the atmosphere they created. Conversely, sincere, calm, and well-intentioned speech is a very powerful way to cultivate good fortune. Sincerity doesn't mean blurting out anything, but speaking truthfully yet consciously. Calmness doesn't mean weakness, but knowing how to maintain moderation so that words aren't controlled by momentary emotions. Good intentions don't mean pretending to be kind, but rather, whether offering advice or refusing, maintaining a sincere desire not to cause unnecessary harm. People with kind words often possess an aura that makes others feel comfortable and want to be near them. They don't need to always speak eloquently, but they know how to say what needs to be said in a way that doesn't offend anyone. And in life, simply making others feel at ease when conversing with you is a great blessing. It preserves good relationships, opens up opportunities, and helps reduce many unnecessary conflicts. The connection between luck and relationships. Often, a person's luck is clearly seen in the people they surround themselves with. If you are constantly surrounded by conflict, exploitation, resentment, or rivalry, it may be time to reevaluate both your choice of people and your own conduct within those relationships. It's a thought-provoking truth that to understand a person's life energy, you often only need to look at their closest relationships, because people don't live in isolation. Every person we keep around contributes to shaping our life's energy field. If you're constantly surrounded by relationships filled with conflict, resentment, rivalry, exploitation, or dragging each other down, it's not the time to blame others for being bad. Of course, not everything bad in a relationship is your fault. But if the same people, the same hurt, the same deadlock keep repeating themselves, then it's time to look deeper. First, let's look back at how we choose our partners. Sometimes we're holding on to unsuitable people simply because we fear loneliness. Sometimes we're staying in relationships that wear us down because we don't want to waste effort or because of familiarity. Sometimes we're drawn to types of people who exhaust us because we still have unhealed voids within ourselves. If we're not mindful, it's easy to call a prolonged imbalance fate, when in reality it's the consequence of unwise choices. But simply looking at others isn't enough. More importantly, we need to look at how we ourselves are present in relationships. Are we approaching others with sincerity or with a need for control? Are we listening or just waiting for our turn to speak? Are we grateful or taking the kindness of others for granted? Are we keeping our word, maintaining moderation, and showing respect? Often, the success of a relationship depends not only on who you meet, but also on who you are when you enter that relationship. A person with a troubled mind will easily create troubled relationships. A suspicious person will find it difficult to maintain trust. A person prone to anger will easily break beautiful connections. A person who is overly self-centered will find it difficult to have lasting and healthy relationships. Conversely, when a person begins to live more brightly, speak more kindly, behave more moderately, and know how to set appropriate boundaries, they also begin to attract other relationships. It's not by magic, but because they are no longer compatible with their old energy patterns. They are less drawn to drama, less attached to toxic relationships, and less accepting of connections that only bring harm. Ultimately, a person's fortune is not changed by a major event, but by how they live each day. A less harsh word can save a relationship. A carefully chosen relationship can change an entire period of life. When words become clearer, the heart also becomes clearer. When relationships begin to heal, the energy field of life also heals. And when all these things change together, a person's fortune will no longer be the same. Some people don't always move the fastest, nor do they always take the biggest leaps, but their lives are quite stable. They rarely rush into impulsive decisions that cause everything to fall apart. They rarely create sharp turns that they then have to scramble to correct. They aren't people without ambition, but rather people who know how to keep their hearts from being swept away by ambition and losing their composure. Conversely, there are people who always want more, faster, better than others, to reach their goals sooner. But because of this, they often live at a very fast pace. And that fast pace easily creates more undercurrents in their lives than they realize. To understand a person's destiny, sometimes you don't need to look at any great achievement, but simply observe their mindset and whether their life's rhythm is guided by inner clarity or by a lack of fulfillment. Why do people who know when enough is enough tend to have more stable luck? Those who are overly greedy are often impatient, prone to making wrong choices, rushing things, and creating their own problems. Conversely, those who know when enough is enough, know when to slow down, maintain boundaries, aren't swept away by competition, tend to have more stable, consistent luck, with fewer undercurrents. Knowing when enough is enough may sound like a simple quality, but it's actually a very profound form of wisdom. In a world that constantly stimulates people to want more, to surpass, to excel, to leap ahead, knowing what is enough for oneself is not a weakness, but a sign of great insight. Those who know when enough is enough are not without dreams. They still strive, develop, work diligently, and want their lives to improve. But they don't let greed guide their decisions. Overly greedy people are often impatient. When they constantly feel the need to be faster, to have more, to surpass others, it's difficult for them to maintain the right pace. They easily perceive slowness as defeat, stopping as falling behind, and feeling uneasy when others are better than them. And when their minds are pushed into that rhythm, they are very likely to make shallow decisions. Making the wrong choice isn't always due to a lack of intelligence. Often, it's because of haste. An overwhelming desire for results prevents one from carefully considering who they trust, what they're doing, or the price they're about to pay. Overly greedy people also tend to rush things. They want results before they have a solid foundation, recognition before they're mature enough, a higher position before their inner strength is sufficient. And it is this rapid progress that often leads to many regrettable missteps in their lives. The danger is that at that time, they often think they are moving forward, but in reality, they are silently disrupting their own path. Because once the foundation is not solid and they go too far, people can easily pay the price with exhaustion. Broken relationships, loss of direction, or decisions that cannot be corrected later. Conversely, those who know contentment tend to have a more stable kind of luck. Stability here doesn't mean never encountering difficulties, but rather creating fewer obstacles for themselves. They know when to slow down. Don't let external pressure force them to live out of sync with their inner selves. They understand that some things get worse the more you rush them, that greed leads to deviations, and that the more you try to hold on, the easier it is to lose. People who know how to set boundaries tend to have more stable luck. They know when to stop, which relationships to pursue, what level of work is sufficient to avoid sacrificing their health, and which competitive situations are not worth getting involved in. Therefore, they experience fewer self-inflicted setbacks in their lives. Not being consumed by the desire to win or lose is also very important. Many people don't truly suffer from lack, but from constantly comparing themselves to others. When one's heart is always placed in an invisible race with others, it's easy to lose one's own rhythm, lose clarity in choice, and lose inner peace. Those who know contentment are different. It's not that they don't see others' talents, but rather that they don't let that distract them from the path that suits them best. And it is this kind of lifestyle that creates a very stable kind of fortune. Not too noisy, not too flashy, not too many extreme ups and downs, but it has depth, stability, and the potential to go far. The first method to understand your fortune is to observe your life cycle. Look back at the last 6 months to a year. When were you at your brightest? And when were you at your darkest? When were things going smoothly? And when were things constantly off-key? You will see that your fortune doesn't come randomly, but is often accompanied by very specific mental states and lifestyles. To understand your fortune, don't just look at one good day or one bad period and jump to conclusions. Fortune isn't something to be read based on fleeting emotions. It should be observed as a cycle. The first way to do that is to look back at your life over the past 6 months to a year. Try to remember when you felt your brightest. It's not just happiest, but truly brightest. That means your mind was clearer, your heart lighter, your decisions more confident, your work more efficient, and your relationships more pleasant. These are phases worth observing closely, because during those times, you're often doing things right that you haven't yet identified. Perhaps it was when you got more sleep, lived a more balanced life, and exposed less to negative energies. Perhaps it was when you stopped comparing yourself to others, stopped being angry, stopped being suspicious, and focused more on your own work. Perhaps it was when you maintained a sufficiently disciplined rhythm of life, spoke more kindly, and showed more gratitude. These things may seem small at first glance, but when placed alongside the period when you experienced enlightenment, you'll begin to see a very clear connection. Conversely, let's also honestly reflect on when you were at your darkest. Darkest here doesn't mean you became worse, but rather that your mind became darker, more confused, heavier, more reactive, more prone to making wrong decisions, and more easily drawn into things that weren't worthwhile. Take a close look at what usually accompanied those periods. Is it because you've been staying up late for extended periods? Living an undisciplined life? Being close to relationships that drain you? Harboring too many expectations? Being too greedy for a particular outcome? Or being overly concerned about what others think? Is it because you've been saying harsher things, thinking more negatively, and looking inward less often? When you look closely enough, you'll see that many things that seemed like bad luck actually stem from your previous state of mind. Next, ask yourself when things are going smoothly and when things are consistently off track. Smooth doesn't mean the absence of difficulties, but rather that even when things are challenging, there's always a way out. Off track isn't just bad luck. It's the feeling that everything you do goes wrong. Every choice you make is incorrect, and every path you take is prone to failure. These are crucial periods to observe because they reveal the mindset and lifestyle that your luck tends to follow. And that's the most important thing. Luck doesn't come randomly. It's usually accompanied by very specific mental states and lifestyles. When you're clear-headed, your luck tends to be clear-headed too. When you're confused, your luck is very likely to be confused as well. Not everything is under your control, but a lot of your luck is actually being created by what you repeat every day. Understanding this is a huge step. Because from here, you no longer just sit and wait for good fortune to come, or fear bad luck to come. You begin to observe, adjust, and nurture the things that brighten your life. And perhaps that is the deepest way to understand fate. Not for superstition, but to live more consciously, more correctly, and more responsibly with the direction your life is taking. Many people, when they see their lives going off track, immediately think of bad luck, the right time, or unfavorable circumstances. But if you look deeper, what might be dragging your luck down isn't something mysterious, but rather lies in your daily habits. A person may wish for many good things, but if their daily life remains chaotic, undisciplined, emotionally driven, and self-destructive through small choices, their luck will hardly improve sustainably. Conversely, some people don't talk much about changing their luck, but they quietly change their lifestyle, behavior, speech, and character. And it is these seemingly small things that gradually lift their entire lives. Luck, in fact, doesn't just come from what we encounter, but also from what we nurture each day. The second method involves examining the habits that are either nurturing or destroying your luck. Staying up late, breaking promises, being easily angered, talking too much and doing little, procrastination, negativity, excessive spending, or immersing yourself in a toxic environment are all things that silently bring down your luck. Conversely, discipline, cleanliness, gratitude, punctuality, keeping your word, and kindness are the silent foundations that pull your luck upwards. If you want to understand whether your luck is going up or down, don't just look at the external results. Look at your inner habits, because results usually come later, while habits are what silently build the foundation long before. Staying up late is a very clear example. Many people think it's just a matter of time, but in reality, it affects many things. When you stay up late for extended periods, your mind becomes more restless, your emotions are more sensitive, your thinking slows down, and your self-control weakens. A sleep-deprived person is often irritable, easily discouraged, prone to procrastination, and more likely to make unwise decisions. This one habit alone is enough to gradually diminish your luck, something many people don't realize. Breaking promises is a subtle, yet powerful way to diminish one's fortune. When a person doesn't keep their word, they first lose favor with others. But more importantly, they weaken their own credibility with themselves. Each time a promise is broken, inner trust is eroded a little. And when a person no longer believes in themselves, it's very difficult to go the distance with stability. Anger is a very common habit that ruins one's luck. Some people get angry over the smallest things, react impulsively at the slightest disagreement, and their words become sharp at the slightest provocation. Anger may pass quickly, but its consequences often last much longer. It breaks relationships, weighs heavily on the mind, and creates a constant state of tension in one's living space. People who are easily angered suffer not only because of others, but also because of the very fire they carry within themselves. Talking a lot but doing little is also a way of weakening one's luck. When people become more accustomed to talking than acting, their energy gradually dissipates and loses its power. They may appear to others as having many ideas and plans, but in real life, they don't accomplish much. This causes a person's energy to become increasingly light, lacking weight, credibility, and the necessary accumulation for good fortune to flourish. Procrastination is a seemingly small habit, but it negatively impacts one's luck. It causes necessary tasks to be put off, leaving a constant feeling of indebtedness to one's life. Those who procrastinate frequently often live under a constant pressure, always feeling like something is unfinished, a task remains unaddressed, or responsibilities are pending. Over time, this weighs heavily on the mind and blocks one's path forward. Negativity, excessive spending, or immersing oneself in a toxic environment are all ways to significantly diminish one's luck. If a person is constantly exposed to gossip, negative content, toxic people, chaotic habits, and an unrestrained lifestyle, it will be very difficult for them to maintain a healthy life. This isn't because they are weak, but because anyone who lives in a distorted environment for a long time will be affected. Conversely, things like discipline, cleanliness, gratitude, punctuality, keeping promises, and kindness are very strong foundations for upward movement of good fortune. Discipline helps to keep life on track. Cleanliness helps to declutter the space and mind. Gratitude reduces feelings of inadequacy. Punctuality and keeping promises give character weight. Kindness brightens relationships. All of these things don't create miracles immediately, but they create a healthy living environment. And good fortune is usually only sustainable when it grows from such a healthy foundation. Practice cultivating good fortune every day. Start with the smallest things. Keep your home tidy, get enough sleep, argue less, speak less, but speak more meaningfully. Help others within your means. Reduce envy and jealousy. And regularly reflect on yourself. Good fortune doesn't usually come from asking for too much, but from living more virtuously each day. The best thing about cultivating good fortune is that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to start. You can begin today with small but genuine things. Start with your living space. A cluttered room that has been neglected for a long time often reflects an overloaded or neglected inner self. When your home is tidier, your workspace is brighter, your living area is cleaner, and your mind is more at peace. Don't underestimate this. Many people have changed their lives simply by tidying up their living space. Getting enough sleep is a fundamental yet powerful way to maintain good health. People who get enough sleep tend to have a calmer mind, clearer thinking, and are less easily swayed by emotions. Many seemingly deep problems can actually be significantly eased simply by living a more balanced life. Avoiding arguments is also a way to maintain good fortune. Not everything that's right needs to be won. Not everyone who misunderstands needs immediate correction. Some arguments don't clarify issues but only tarnish people's hearts. Wise people know how to conserve their energy for more worthwhile things. Speaking less, but speaking more meaningfully, is a very valuable practice. Less complaining, less boasting, fewer empty promises. And instead, speaking more truthfully, clearly, and kindly. When words carry weight, a person's fortune changes significantly. Helping others within your means is a wonderful way to open up opportunities for good fortune. It doesn't have to be something grand. Sometimes it's just a word of advice, a timely act of kindness, or genuine sincerity without ulterior motives. Good deeds don't disappear, they return in unexpected ways. Reducing envy and resentment is crucial if you want your luck to improve. The heavier your heart, the more chaotic your life becomes. People who constantly compare themselves to others, are resentful, competitive, and irritable, often taint their hearts before any negative influences enter. When you reduce anger, suspicion, and attachment, your life will be much lighter. And finally, regularly reflect on yourself. Not to blame yourself, but to avoid living mindlessly. What are you harboring in your heart today? What are you saying? Who are you around? What habits are you repeating? If you ask yourself these questions regularly, it will help you live much more mindfully. Good fortune doesn't usually come from excessive desires. It comes from living more authentically each day. When your way of life becomes brighter, your mind becomes purer. When your presence in the world becomes more wholesome, your luck will change accordingly. Not immediately, but it's very real, very lasting, and it's well worth starting today. There's a truth worth reflecting on. Stagnation in life doesn't always stem from bad luck. Often what's weighing you down isn't external circumstances, but rather an internal state that's been troubled for a long time without being acknowledged. Some people constantly complain about bad luck, everything going wrong, people not connecting with them, opportunities slipping away. But if you look deeper, they might be living in a state of constant drain. Drained by irregular sleep patterns. Drained by excessive negative thinking. Drained by harboring too much resentment, bitterness, anxiety, and comparison. Drained by letting themselves drift through life without a clear direction. When your inner energy is so chaotic, it's not surprising that your external life is also out of sync. And perhaps one of the deepest steps in human maturity is to stop asking how life is treating you and start asking how you are living your life. A practical lesson for the audience: if you feel your life is stagnant today, don't just ask why you're unlucky. Try asking yourself more deeply. Is your mind troubled lately? Is your lifestyle draining your energy? Are you treating yourself and life kindly? Often, changing your luck doesn't start from the outside, but from correcting yourself. This is a very practical but also very difficult lesson because people tend to look outward before looking inward. When things go wrong, we easily blame the timing, other people, circumstances, or our luck. That's not entirely wrong, because there are indeed periods in life that are more difficult than usual. But if we stop there, we easily fall into a passive position. Only when we dare to look back at ourselves do we begin to have the power to change. If you feel life is stagnant today, try sitting down and slowly asking yourself, has my mind been troubled lately? Am I living in a constant state of worry, stress, and lack of peace? Am I letting too much noise into my head every day? Perhaps you're not lazy or weak, but you've lived too long in a weary state of mind, draining your energy without realizing it. Next, look at your lifestyle. Is there something draining your energy each day? You sleeping too late, lacking discipline, eating irregularly, clinging to too many unhealthy relationships, or constantly procrastinating on things you know you should be doing? Are you wasting your time watching others, comparing yourself to others, or trying to prove something to the world instead of focusing on rebuilding your own foundation? Many people want a change of fortune but are unwilling to change their lifestyle. They desire a new opportunity, a new turning point, a new benefactor, but they cling to the habits that are causing their lives to become chaotic. This is like wanting a clean stream to flow through your life, but the vessel you're holding is still full of old sediment. Without cleansing yourself, it's difficult to sustainably welcome a new flow into your life. Another crucial question is whether you are being kind to yourself. Many people are harmed less by external factors than by the harm they inflict on themselves daily. They push themselves with overly demanding expectations. They speak harshly to themselves. They disregard small efforts. They neglect sleep, health, and rest. They live in a rhythm devoid of any gentleness towards themselves. People who live like this find it difficult to have good fortune because their inner selves have long been depleted. And also ask yourself, are you treating life kindly? Kindness here doesn't mean always being meek or submissive, but rather how you present yourself in life. Are your words sowing seeds of negativity? Is your way of living keeping your word? Does your interaction with others leave a pleasant impression or only pressure and negative reactions? Because many things that seem like luck are actually created by how we interact with life each day. Often, changing your fortune doesn't start from the outside. It begins with correcting yourself, correcting your schedule, correcting your words, correcting your rhythm of life, correcting your reactions, correcting the things you harbor in your heart. And what's valuable is that these changes don't need to wait until life is in a crisis to begin. They can start today with a very small but very real decision. In summary, understanding one's own destiny is profoundly important. Understanding destiny isn't about superstition or surrendering to fate, but about living more mindfully of what you're emitting each day. When you understand your current stage of life, what you lack, and what needs adjusting, you'll be less confused and more proactive on your life's journey. This is perhaps the most important thing when talking about luck. If misunderstood, people can easily turn it into something vague, becoming either overly dependent on it or overly fearful of it. But if understood correctly, luck is a very useful mirror for reflecting on one's own life. Understanding fate is not about superstition. It's not about attributing everything to destiny. It's not about thinking your time is up when things get tough, or thinking you're favored by heaven when things go smoothly. That kind of understanding is both superficial and deprives people of their power to take control of their own lives. Understanding one's destiny doesn't mean passively accepting fate. If everything is predetermined, people easily give up on self-improvement. The truth is, much of a person's destiny can be nurtured through their way of life. Their thoughts, speech, choices, work ethic, mindset, and approach to adversity all contribute to the flow of their life. Understanding your current stage of life can reduce feelings of confusion. Sometimes things go downhill not because you're useless, but because you're in a phase where you need to reflect, reassess, and rebuild. Sometimes things stagnate not because you lack ability, but because you're out of sync with your own pace of life. Simply understanding this can significantly lighten your burden. Understanding your shortcomings will help you avoid going in the wrong direction. Some people lack discipline, but seek luck. Some lack inner peace, but seek achievement. Some lack inner clarity, but think a change of environment is enough. So understanding your weaknesses will help you correct them in the right places, instead of trying hard but failing to reach the root of the problem. And when people know what needs adjusting, they become more proactive on their life journey. Instead of just waiting for things to get better on their own one fine day, start to realize they need to go to bed earlier, be less angry, end some toxic relationships, keep their promises more, live a cleaner life, and turn inward to nurture their inner selves. That's when good fortune is no longer something distant, but becomes a very real part of improving one's life every day. Ultimately, perhaps the deepest understanding of fate is realizing that life is not only determined by what happens, but also by how we are present in those events. When the heart is brighter, the path will often be brighter. When we live more righteously, life will gradually become smoother. And who knows, the change of fortune that many people have been searching for so long might begin the very moment they stop. Look inward and choose to live differently from today. Luck isn't entirely a gift from heaven. It's largely nurtured or eroded by how we think, live, and interact with life each day. When our inner selves are brighter, our words are kinder, our lifestyles cleaner, and our minds less troubled, our luck will gradually change. If you find this video thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to spread life lessons that will help you become more steadfast, brighter, and have a more prosperous life each day.